Okay, and I do believe we are live. So this is the MG Saturday Rogue broadcast, the Writers Roundtable and discussion and talk of life, love, muses, and all things writing, and just the nitty gritty of what we're doing in our daily lives as writers. And of course, people were late, but as Nikolai pointed out, the most important people are here. And here we go. And this is a I should make him wait. This is the another masculine geek, and he's not living up to TJ's on timeness, as it were. So James is really he's letting the team down. Jesus Christ, James, late again. You're muted too. What the fuck?
Oh, I am.
No, now you're not.
Enjoy the decline and let them burn.
That's right. New
Decline,
background.
Yeah.
Indeed. James, are you there? Or you just what's going on? We don't hear shit. You're really low. The fuck is going on over there?
Let's try it now.
There you go.
Okay.
God, the man that's going to do voiceover work and can't get his microphone working.
Listen, man. I only just got this computer set up right now. I was like I said to you on Twitter. I was surprised moved into a new room today.
Oh, okay. And Amos is offering up his services as a third masculine geek in case you don't work out. So it's apparently.
Amos, you are welcome to challenge me for that position. You're not going to win.
Wow, the gauntlet's been thrown down. I'd like it.
Exactly.
All right, so we'll give everyone before we get into the meat of the discussion and going around and talking and getting started. We'll give them another few minutes. I don't know what the fuck's going on. They've had ample time to prepare for this, so
Yeah, all morning.
Exactly, all morning, all afternoon, weeks before this. You know, youngest guy having a boomer moment, absolutely. So, but everyone on this discussion list so far has been on the show, except for Barry, which is kind of cool. This is Barry's first time on the Masculine Geek Show.
And he's not on.
Yep, I'm here.
He's here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's got the he's iconing it. He's anonymous.
Yeah, I think you invited me on a while back. I think it might have been last year, but yeah, things didn't work out. But
yeah, you were busy working and whatnot, so that's not a problem.
But yeah,
we're like, fuck that guy. Never mind him.
Yeah, don't blame you. Don't blame you.
Nah, that's cool. I figured to get you on eventually, and then shortly after that, you were on with Nick August.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
which was pretty cool. And we have the return of TJ and Nikolai. So there you go. And TJ has since shaven his face.
But haven't I've been clean shaved for a while.
Have you? I've forgotten. Okay, cool. And someone made mention of that in the chat. So
No, I haven't had my beard for a long time.
okay, you gonna keep the clean shaven look for a while?
Depends on the morning.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Barry's Australian. What? I don't think. Are you Australian, Barry?
yes, I am.
Okay,
Yes,
there you go. So you're over there with Nikolai.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
You're in Australia.
Yep. Just up north, Queensland.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I just moved from Brisbane to Melbourne.
Oh,
Well,
did
not
you?
you.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. In January this year, just before all this shit show started.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
So do you live in Brisbane?
Yeah, roundabouts, close to there. But yeah, you could classify it as Brisbane, I would say. But yeah, 7 a.m. here.
Oh
Nice
yeah.
early
Oh
morning.
shit.
And it's
Okay,
8
you guys
o'clock in
got up
Melbourne.
early for this.
Yeah, 1 hour difference here.
Oh, you're on daylight savings, aren't you?
Yeah, we're enjoying, the rational way of looking at time. I really, really like it because, as you know, in Brisbane, by 5, 6 o'clock, it's already dark.
Yeah.
Even in summer, I think it's 7 or something. But here, like I can go for a ride after work. Like I can leave home at 5, 6 even, and it's still daytime until 8 something, and it's only early spring.
Yeah.
So in summer it's going to be like normal places of the world where it gets dark after 9 or something like that. So it makes sense, like for many reasons. I
Yeah.
don't know why Queensland is stuck up. I mean, just don't change. I don't know. It's just cool.
Well, I mean, I think they've never. I think I remember it being here once, and that was about, would be about 30 years ago now. And they tried it once, and someone didn't like it, and we never had it again. So in summer we have a different time to the rest of the eastern coast of the country, which is inconvenient for some people.
Yeah, I remember there was some sort of a referendum not a long time ago, like maybe 10, 15 years ago. I remember it was on, and obviously it was not accepted for some stupid reason. I think it's to do with farmers. They don't like it for some reason.
Yeah. Usually, well, I think you might be right there. I seem to remember the farmers had a bit of a problem with it.
Yeah.
Damn
Yeah,
farmers.
well, it's interesting. I've lived in Brisbane for, I don't know, 17 years.
Oh yeah.
We've never met, obviously, because the masculine geeks did not discover me, at least.
It's our fault, yeah.
Yeah. They should have dig me up before.
Yeah.
Exactly. I blame Rob. He's not here to defend himself, so we'll blame Rob.
Yeah. Right.
All right. All right. So James, there you go, James. Here. Are you doing the incognito thing today? You leaving off your video?
I have to leave off my video, unfortunately, or else it would take me an additional 20, 30 minutes to get this ready.
Gotcha.
I had to move the entire setup up here as well, with a bunch of desks and things of that sort. Everything got screwed up today, but
Gotcha.
it's just
No worries.
like slap back.
Yeah. Well, we hung out late last night with Mr. Aaron Clary, so it's understandable that you didn't have much time to get your shit together.
There may have been a 4-hour nap after work or something like that.
Well, it's totally appropriate. All right, so let's sort of muddle along here and get started. We can wait. The guys can come in as they arrive, if they do. So let's go around the table, as it were. We'll start with TJ, and I want to know what the latest thing you're working on. Let's get started with that. Like what you're doing.
I'm working on a book that I wrote years ago when I was first starting out as a writer, and the story is good. Like, I'm not making any major changes to the story structure, but my prose is pretty bad. I was learning how to write, but I was also thinking when you're an inexperienced writer, you have this insecurity about you feel like you have to over-explain stuff. You have to show that you actually know what you're talking about when you don't. So there's a lot of just unnecessary stuff. So I took this book that was about, I'd say, 230 pages last year, and I've whittled it down to about 135 just by cutting out.
Oh, nice.
Cutting out a lot of stuff. Yeah, so I'm getting to the point where I feel like saying less. Like, my last 2 books were 60 pages. This one's probably going to be 130 by the time I'm done. And it's an interesting experience to go back and look at a book that I've been working on for 16 years and having to constantly rewrite it to where, because you improve your writing, you edit it, then you go back and look at it again. So that's the book is set in the 1930s, and the topic is increasingly relevant to what's going on in America today.
Oh, okay. Do you have a working title, or is that still?
The title is The Shadow Men.
Oh, okay.
So
Cool.
I found a really good quote from Edmund Burke that I'm going to include at the beginning of it that I thought kind of summarizes it.
Is that the draft you sent me a little while ago?
Yeah, and I hope
PDF?
you didn't read. Yeah, I hope you didn't read through it because I've made so many changes since then.
Oh, okay. I actually did start reading that about a month or so ago, and I want to get back. Did you want me to wait until you have another
Yeah.
draft, or?
Yeah, because you're going to have about 60 pages left. It's going to be.
Oh, okay. That's significant. That's significant. Yeah, I'll hold off then.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. How about yourself, Barry? What's up with you? And you want to tell everyone who you are, because like we were saying, this is the first time you've been on Masculine Geek. So.
Yeah, sure. I'm a resident Twitter clown, and part-time writer, I suppose. I mean, obviously it's not my day job, but I do like to put stuff up on my site. I contribute to Punch Riot, which Nick runs. I do have a book out that I published earlier this year called The Leather Cannon. It's available on Amazon, and that's basically me. But at the moment, I'm working on trying to get a collection of what I've done to date out in hard copy. Titled at the moment Shit Origami.
Nice.
It'll have.
No, I have a question though, real fast. Are you going to write that one? Are you going to write that one on your phone as well?
No, the most of them were written on the phone. So it's only since COVID I've actually started using a computer. So to write these things. So so some the vast majority on the phone. So rest assured you'll get that iPhone Pages quality.
Okay, awesome. I love it.
And so that's that. I'm also working on another novel. Haven't got a title for it at the moment. All I can tell you, it involves a serial killer and a dwarf. So
a serial killer and a dwarf, not the same. They're two separate things.
They're not the same people, no. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. I'm in no rush to finish that one. So the priority at the moment is getting the stories finalized for Shit Origami. I hope to have that done by the end of the month, actually. And believe it or not, I have found there's quite a few mistakes on my website from the stories. So my editing skills are so poor, I'll have to go over them so they don't appear in the hard copy. So that's basically me at the moment. And
Okay, nice. Now you just mentioned that you part-time writing. When was that officially? You said, I want to kind of do this as I have something to say. I want to get that out, whether it's on your phone or not. I mean, is that something that's been percolating for a while, the Leather Cannon, or it just?
I mean, I've been doing bits and pieces. Like I've got a few notebooks here that date back about 20 years. I took a long break. I didn't write a thing for about 10 years, and then probably last year I just thought, stuff it. I usually get up pretty early. I was getting up at 4 o'clock and half asleep, typing away, writing all sorts of insanity that you've probably read on the site if you've been there. And I decided to get the site together, and it just went from there. I mean, a lot of weird shit goes on inside my head, and it's got to get out.
Nice.
It's got to be put on the paper, otherwise, yeah, verbalizing it would probably get me in trouble.
I love it. Take a sip of my wine. Now, James, obviously everyone knows who you are, but what are you working on lately? What's your big project?
Big projects. If I had to, So I'm mostly looking to be working on other people's projects, mostly when it comes to audiobooks, as you and I discussed last night with Mr. 4 Hour Nap and Fab.
That's right.
And but here's the thing: I've been working on a new tabletop project, which is going to be my first adventure module, and I've been trying to figure out how I can incorporate it. I've been exploring the weird design space between game mechanics and writing, and the feelings that are evoked at to your players and to whoever might happen to be running the game. And so that's been a little bit of a big project, but I got a co-writer for that so that I wouldn't have to be as involved as I usually am. which means that I've been freed up for like 2 other projects, I think.
Okay.
I've been continuing to look at scripts for Rise of the Forest, which was a fantasy. I've been doing a comic adaptation of a fantasy novel that I finished back in 2017, I believe. Or no, sorry, finished in 2019. I started in 2017. And related to that, just this past month, I started developing the outline for a sequel to Rise of the Forest. So that's kind of what's in the that's what's in the chamber at the moment, insofar as my writing is concerned.
Gotcha. And obviously your work here with Masculine Geek too. So let's add that to the workload, as it were.
Absolutely, but that's primarily essays that I have in the barrel.
Gotcha. Yeah, and the little audios that you've been doing as well.
Oh yeah. But when it comes to writing itself, it's the essays.
Yeah.
Audio, I'm going to be all over the place. God.
Yeah, you are. Shit, you're gonna have your hands full, but in a good way. And last but not least, Nikolai, what have you been up to?
I should probably go back to our last, whatever you call it, podcast. It's obviously not a podcast, videocast, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
And obviously Barry and James were not there, so I'll quickly tell them, I guess, why I'm here in the first place, talking to writers. I wouldn't describe myself as a full-time writer. Why I'm here is because, and I think that's how we, I guess, met in the first place, is I wrote a series of memoirs. Like, I used to race for a living bicycles, like I used to be a rider, and in Soviet Union. So I left Soviet Union in 91, I think. And before that, I was racing for a Soviet national team where I won the world championships as I was still a junior. And I started writing out of the blue. I was obviously playing a little bit with writing this, writing that. Obviously, English is not my first language. I learned it primarily in Canada when I was living in Montreal, even though it's not a English-speaking place in Canada. And it's bilingual, you probably know that. So I started playing with writing because I spent a huge amount of time on the internet. And I was working in internet industry as a web designer. So basically learn English through posting on the web forums and discussing stuff.
Okay.
And then out of the blue, I approached a magazine in Australia. At the time, I think they've closed. Not I think they've closed now, but at the time, I think it was probably the best cycling magazine in Australia. It was very well done, well-known magazine, and I just offered, just approach the magazine and said, "This is who I am. This is a story I can tell." And it was a small project at first, like literally just one-off thing. But then it grew as I wrote the first, not even the first part. I just wrote a little story, a memoir, basically. And it just took off because it became so popular and people started asking the magazine if we can continue this. And that became a series of memoirs published in this magazine that went on for 2 years. So I was writing for each issue a new story. So it became a story after story, what happened and how I left and what I was doing in Soviet Union, racing and all of that. And then out of this series of memoirs, I put them together and edited a little bit. And it became like a book. It's probably 50, 60,000 words I've written over time for this magazine. But I wouldn't call it a book because it's not finished. And that's why I'm coming back to our previous episode with Masculine Geek guys, is that they asked me, I think it was Vince who asked me, what are you going to do with this unfinished project? Unfinished in the sense that the story doesn't end. It just ends at some point, but there is more to it. And at the time I said, I want to, and actually Vince encouraged me at the time, finish it, said, you need to finish it. And when I left that session, I was sort of thinking that I need to finish it. But as I said last time, I've reached the point where I need to tell things that would bite me in the ass now, because it's not, as I said back then, it's not something that, I don't have a dead body buried anywhere, in Canada or America. But there are some things that happen along the way that can come back now, 20 years plus later, and bite me in the ass. And plus, it involves other people who were part of it, and I'm not sure if they would be happy to. So it's a problem of this memoir writing where some other people are involved, and you need to tell the truth. And the problem with that is that it can turn on you now and not destroy you, but it can create certain problems. And so I was struggling with this. Do I go ahead and tell it as it is? Because that's the only way, obviously, I should be doing it. And I decided to at least put a hold and maybe decide later. And eventually it kind of became a decision that maybe it should be just left as it is, even though I still get a lot of emails from people and asking me to continue. But that's the problem I'm facing with this particular project, is that it, as I said, it reached a point where I'm not sure if I need to go on. In the meantime, as I found myself enjoying writing, and apparently people like what I do, I started a few other things, novels, basically fiction novels, and they were lying, as as always with writers, they're lying dormant, just some ideas, some notes, even I started one. And recently, again, after discussing it with a couple of friends, I decided to resurrect them and give them a good sort of makeup, see if I can actually make something out of it, which resulted, like, I've had probably written a good few thousand words of one novel. It kind of a thriller about a guy who got wrongly convicted. It's actually based on a true story I've read somewhere, where a guy got convicted for a crime he didn't commit in the 60s during those protests where a bomb went off and didn't kill anybody, didn't even injure anybody, but he got blamed for it and he got sentenced for it. But he got sentenced on two kind of counts. One is a state sort of conviction, and the other one was a federal conviction. So on a state conviction, he got a light sentence, I think it's 2-year term, which he served, I think, at least half of it. But the the federal one was much more heavier, because it's a federal law, slightly different law. And I think this legal concept is called not double jeopardy, it's called double sovereignty, where it is possible to prosecute a person for the same crime twice. So it's slightly different doctrine in law. And so while that case was still undergoing, sort of under procedure, he skipped bail and disappeared. And then he started a brand new life. And it went on for, I think, 10, 15 years. And he became a successful businessman. And what he made a mistake of, he decided to go for, I think, a mayor of a city where he was living. So he got into politics, and the journalist started digging and discovered that there are some holes in his life, started digging more and discover who he was. So that's the real story, and I decided to base my story on sort of on this framework of a guy being wrongly convicted, disappearing, because I actually kind of fascinated by this idea of resurrecting your life under a different identity for some reason. I was thinking about it myself at some point, obviously being married and having, at the time I didn't have kids, but it was difficult to pull off. But that idea really sort of fascinates me, about how you can restart from zero, which again goes back to my professional career as a writer, where you have to do that quite a few times. When things go wrong, you have to come back to square one and start from there. So and then as I started writing, I discovered that I was going too much into some details about it. The story involves hacking and again stealing identities through computer hacking and all of that. And as I started reading what I had written before, I realized that I go too much into technical details about how things happen on the internet, and I discarded this whole thing and decided to just go, simple, old school way of just telling the story. So that's where I'm at the moment. And I got stuck a little bit about how to put everything together, how to make a story coherent, because there was too many plot lines, things like that, just normal writers' problems. And at the same time, I thought actually maybe I should try short story. I've been reading Barry's website, and I love his little short stories. They just some of them are,
they're laugh out loud
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
It's just it's so nice to have it.
Yeah,
It's so refreshing.
I know. And why I thought I would do that is because a lot of writers that I respect, and even though I might not read a lot of their stuff, but I respect them for their, I guess, success and other things. All of them are saying the same thing, that you need to try short story, because short stories are like condensed novels, right? Like you have to tell what you have to tell in a very condensed way. You have to do everything you do in a novel, but in a very short period of time as you write, and everything else.
Yeah,
So
there's something to be said for making something punchy.
Yeah.
You can go on for just about any subject for, really ages if you wanted to.
Yeah. And so I thought I might. It's basically like, again, I always go back to sport and compare things with sport, because they're so similar with sort of real life, even though it's not real. It's all bullshit and stuff like that. But it's training. I see it as training, because if you produce, let's say, 5-10 short stories, it's like you almost produce 10 novels, right? Because in a sense, that's what they are, little novels that you have to do in this short form. So I had this idea of husband and wife driving in the car, and the wife says to husband, the husband at some point says, "Isn't it wonderful," to the wife, "isn't it wonderful that we're not robots?" And she says, "What are you talking about? The humans have been extinct for centuries." And so this guy is obviously a human, and he just learned from his wife that there are no humans. So that's the starting point. And I didn't get far, because at this point, I don't know where to go. I just had this stuck in my head for a long time. Maybe it even came from somewhere. I don't know. Maybe I heard it somewhere, some conversation like that. So that's two things, basically. I'm doing as you know, I have an ADD obviously, so I need to do 25 things at the same time.
I think we all have a touch of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a writer's problem, and then I have to somehow finish it. So that's sorry it took so long, but that's what I'm at the moment.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. I like it. Is that something you guys struggle with too? ADHD, HDHDs with your writing? I mean, is that do you have a? Let me back up and say, do you sit down, force yourself into the chair, and stare at the blank page, as it were, or do you let things percolate? And when something comes to mind, you feel the urge. Then is that when you sit down and do it, or like Barry, you whip out your phone and start like, oh, I have an idea. I have this scene I want to, and go ahead and do that, or is it? Are you more disciplined?
Yeah, in my case, it's usually there's a spark. So I'll see something stupid or hear some ridiculous conversation that someone's had. Usually something like you'll be surprised at how much like what would you call it, like fodder there is on Twitter, for example. I mean, so many idiotic conversations take place. But even just in real life, I mean, I could be standing in line, at the post office, for example, and I might hear two dickheads in front of me having a conversation. And that might spark something. And yeah, as you said, the phone comes out and look out, because something's been put up. So that's usually how I work. Previously, it just all comes out at once. Like I don't step away. I just get it done and I walk away. I let it sit there. I've tried to change that just to see how things turn out, but I'm usually vomit on the page and then come back and clean up later on, sort of guy.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Same for you, TJ? Do you have a set writing time, or is it the same thing when you feel the urge, when you get that spark, that flame, that fire?
Yeah, something like that. Because I used to have a goal where I wanted to write a certain number of words a day. That was just the quantity was the goal. And as you can probably guess, I'm suffering from that when I'm trying to edit my books, because there was a lot of stuff that was just fluff, or it was just to fill a page, and it wasn't. I'm getting to the point where I really don't have much patience for any kind of scenes or anything that slows down the pace. I want it to just keep moving. That's why it's kind of, maybe it's because my attention span is getting a lot less. I think people just have shorter attention spans. But at the same time, I think it's because there's so many books have been written that you're not going to say anything that hasn't been said already. So keeping it, you almost have to take advantage of the reader's imagination to fill in the blanks for what almost understated writing is the way I'm looking at now. But I don't write at a particular time or a particular moment. It's now just if I know what I'm doing, because I don't want to write a book and then have to spend more time fixing it than actually writing.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm the same way too. I have 4 or 5 different, as you know, different writing projects that are in various stages of progress and completion. So yeah, I tried the whole sit down and do 500 words a day, and just it doesn't work, because at that point it feels like work. It's not enjoyable. So how about you?
Yeah, I tried that as well. 700,000. Yeah, it kind of when you cannot produce it, you feel guilty and not having done what you were supposed to do, and it's creates a bit of not a depressed state, but it sort of I haven't done what I was supposed to do, and it's like a bummer.
Yeah, you feel disappointed in yourself.
Yeah, and next day you don't do anything because you failed.
You're like, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah, well, that's where drugs are handy, and that's the sort of no. It's when it comes to, if you have a specific routine, or if you have a meal, or if you have a favorite drink while you're writing, I find that's usually effective in maybe not lifting writer's block, whatever that might be for the individual person. But it can get me further into a mindset and let me know that I'm still I'm still connected to this project in some way, even if I didn't work on it today.
You were doing writer things.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So it might happen to be that you kind of, you hop on for the day and you dick around and, well, this section isn't alphabetized, let me alphabetize it. And writing for tabletop is really like that, where where you were discussing the spending more time editing things and actually spending it on the book itself. That is tabletop in a nutshell, and it is hellish if you are doing it alone. It's so annoying because you've already done the creative work. And now you have to go through and you have to spruce it up for whoever it is that's going to have it at their table. And it's incredibly annoying, but that's where co-writers come in.
I also find, like, when I do paid work, it actually, that's probably the problem I have, is that when it's paid, I just sit down and do it. And I find myself, again, because of difficulty to focus on things, I find myself delaying delivery until the very last moment, and then I have this all-nighters when I have to finish. If I promise to send my work by whatever Monday morning, I find myself sitting through Saturday and Sunday and just writing away like a crazy maniac, and then editing everything, and then I have to deliver it by 9 o'clock. And that I find helpful because I can actually deliver what I've promised. While working on your own stuff, it doesn't have that quote-unquote deadline. It doesn't have that urge to finish it. It has this open door when you can finish it anytime you want, and that sometimes I think it's major, for me at least, a major problem. And I think the solution to that is to create some kind of a routine and a habit of at least doing something, and that's something that I need to work on, to create this routine and do it, as James just mentioned, like whatever it is, as long as it's relating to what you're doing, would be hugely helpful. And of course, there's this other crap and bullshit that's going on with being online, and for some reason, like Twitter, for instance, we mentioned before. I mean, it's such a crappy thing, but I found quite a few geeks because of that. I mean, I've met you guys, and you invited me because you've I guess met me on Twitter. So there is this positive. Like, I would have ditched it a long time ago because it's such a useless stuff for the things that it was designed to do. But other things, that meeting people and getting in touch with people and just having conversations through these messages. I've been talking to a guy in Canada, a former professional. We've been just talking about bikes and racing. So that part of it is there, and to keep it going, you have to be there. But it's one of those things that just get on your way, and obviously, no matter what you do, you still notice all this stupidity that is going on, especially on Twitter. And I'm trying to trim it, like create these filters to block stuff. Not people, but just to block what they write. Like my Twitter has Trump in it, whoever is talking about. I mean, it's not like against Trump. It just people are completely going stupid when they talk about him. So
I think Rob has
a bunch of filters.
He has 20 or 30 words that he's filtered through Twitter, and it's completely curated his Twitter feed down to manageable proportions where he's not losing his mind over bullshit.
Yeah, it's helpful. But there is this problem of us wasting our time on bullshit like that.
Yeah.
Twitter and Facebook is not a problem for me, but Twitter could be sometimes.
Yeah, I found that for myself as well. Like I have to catch myself and go, all right, let me put this down and get back to work. TJ's looking around a little guiltily.
No, it is hard because and especially as for being a writer. But I think the one thing that Twitter has actually probably helped me out with is being concise, like learning, because you can only have so many words in a tweet. And so I almost think of that as the same as my sentences or points I'm trying to make in a book. I keep it really to the point. And I read these older books sometimes, and these sentences are so, they're not, like, writing should be very clear. It should be easy to follow what's going on in the book. And a lot of books, they don't do that because it's so wordy. And it's not, you have to get to the point when you're on Twitter, at least if you want to be understood.
I'll let you finish your thought, but I have a theory about that too, but go ahead.
It just kind of goes back to, like, I think it also, I had the time and the energy to write 100 pages of a novel. And a lot of it was just me writing about stuff that I was learning about. So it was almost acting like a journal.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that was the problem. Is I was using a novels to write about stuff that I was learning about, because I'm 22 years old. What do I know? You don't know anything. You really don't. You have no life experience. You don't know what it's like to be in certain situations or experience certain emotions that you're never going to be able to convey. And that's why people have to be explicit, because they don't know how to write about someone going through an experience without describing it in very technical, overt. Whereas a good writer knows when you don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
Or not say so much.
Gotcha. I think if you go back to things like Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and even Melville's Moby Dick, they are very wordy and very descriptive. And I think one of the reasons for that is they didn't have the internet. They didn't have the access to information that we have. Right. So it was like, I'm sure most people, when they were reading Moby Dick, didn't even know what a whale was. Okay. So it didn't have access to that bit of information that we do. Yeah. So now, because we have access to information instantaneously, and we want everything yesterday, even the content, the reading, I'll use it loosely, literature that we consume needs to be fast and quick, which lends itself to my own decision to write very short novellas, because that's, I mean, even myself, I don't want to sit down and read War and Peace. You know, a book that you can beat someone to death with. I mean, that's I want something that I can sit down over a weekend and enjoy and soak it up and go, oh, okay, this is really cool, and this enriched my life in some way and is enjoyable, and then go on to the next one.
I'll deviate from your statement on being too wordy a little bit. I think when it comes to because I think the source is the internet. When it comes to just using punchier writing, like, okay, we all get it. It's a car. We get it. It's a red car. We extra get it. We don't need to go into like what kind of engine it has, unless that's in some way relevant. And even then, that's just that is a question that then needs to be answered about, like, well, how relevant is it? Is this going to enhance the reader's experience in some fashion? Because nowadays we have such a broader access to visuals. Just visuals. We'll take that alone. When it comes to, if you are giving me enough information, and I don't quite know what enough is yet, but I will come up with something in my imagination. I will visualize what it is that you're talking about. It's fine. It's usually fine, especially if you hit that threshold of information. If you go too far, you are either spending time on something that I don't care about, to where I cannot connect the beginning of your story to the end of it. This was the color of the desk, and this was the color of the lamp.
It's like Umberto Eco in Name of the Rose, where he's describing a door for like 11 pages.
Yeah,
it's like what the fuck? Yeah,
it's like, what's going on? But if you go into something like Jack Vance, the guy spends a ridiculous amount of time on descriptions, especially when it comes to openers. Like the very first short story in Not Eyes of the Overworld, The Dying Earth, is this description of a wizard's tower and all of the different plant hybrids and animal hybrids that he's maintaining a watch over.
And you're like,
and
I don't fucking care.
No. Here's the thing. No, if you read The Dying Earth, you will care. You, Vince, would absolutely care. I can say that with 90% certainty. And the reason for it is he is describing visuals that you would not have come up with on your own. Most likely. He's describing things.
His style of writing will draw you in.
Exactly, because it is so otherworldly. It is so different from what you are used to seeing, but has a tiny little thread of similarity to the real Earth that you'd be able to connect to and emotionally resonate with. I don't know what a better term for that would be, so I'm just going resonate.
Go with resonate. I like it. It's very Nikola Tesla.
And so that's the exception to the rule, if you will, that I think proves everything else that we're saying is when it comes to these situations where old books would have to be overly descriptive because you had you did not have as broad of an experience.
Yeah, you had no idea what they were talking about, what that was, because you didn't have that experience. Your chances are you lived in a little bubble in your town.
Exactly. And you would have some connection to the outside world. Like, sure, you as a medieval peasant would not go 30 miles outside of your home, but chances were you knew somebody who fought in the Crusades. You knew somebody who fought in a war and would travel very far away. And you would have some connection to the outside world in that sense. But when it comes to what we have now, I mean, just visually speaking, we are creating things that we cannot describe or do not have a vocabulary for at this point. I know I create some of them on it, with the motion graphics software. It's weird how the human mind interprets these things, but again, when it comes to, I guess just to cap it off, when it comes to the modern day, we don't need to go over every molecule and every detail that we could possibly imagine in a given story.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. It's true.
Point.
Yeah.
Speaking of sentences, I'll just add another, angle to it. Like, I guess, probably most readers and writers, I don't think, sentences, they should be as short as possible, ideally just one word and then full stop and you move to another one. But I'm reading now a book by C.J. Hopkins. You know who that is?
No.
C.J. Hopkins sometimes writes for this website. He's a playwright. What's the right English word?
Playwright. Yeah, playwright.
He's based in Germany. He sometimes writes for this website called Off Guardian, like people who try to at least give some truthful perspective on what's going on in the world. So they are I think some of them are former Guardian journalists who created alternative, source of information. And he had written quite a few books, and he teaches playwright in Germany, classes on writing, stuff like that. And I decided, I've met him on Twitter as well, and we've exchanged a few messages. And I decided to, because I actually like his journalism writing, I thought I would try his fiction. So I bought his book. And as I started reading, I was quite surprised in a very good sense of this word by his style, because it kind of a mixture of, going back to sentences, what I want to say is that he's using very, very long sentences, which I hate. I mean, as a description, like long sentence, bad. Like, I don't like it. So I usually quit reading if I find this complicated. But this guy, he because of his, I guess, style, he manages to keep you engaged with his super long sentences, convoluted and complicated, but you still can follow along and enjoy his kind of jokingly sarcastic style of writing. So the book is basically a dystopian novel, which, again, dystopians are now, so like so many people trying to write them. It has become a common, I guess, a theme in writing. So this is a dystopian thing. But the style reminded me of David Wallace and a few other writers. And I actually asked him, like I said to him, that there is this flavor of Wallace there. And he said, yeah, you're right. There's quite a few influences, including Orwell and things like that. But coming back to what we were talking about, I think it's about the mastery of the writer to keep a reader engaged, whatever the sentence length is or whatever he's doing, like James pointed out. If it goes into these long descriptions or whatever it is, if it's interesting, I'm going to read it. Doesn't matter if he goes for 10 pages or 11 pages describing something. If he keeps me engaged and if it's interesting, I don't mind at all how long it takes to describe something, as long as it's keeping me interested. So it comes down to, I think, the mastery of the writer, how to do it. And if it's long sentences, convoluted, complicated, but I can still follow along, it's fine. I don't care as long as the writing is interesting. So it doesn't really matter what interesting about it is. It doesn't really matter how you do it, as long as the end result is pleasing and engaging to the reader. That's pretty much all. That's the game, to keep the reader turning the pages. That's basically what we're trying to do.
No, that's true. That makes sense. Absolutely. The Red Crusader has a quick question, which I threw up in the banner. Did you guys go to school for writing structure and workflow, or do you have free online resources or books? I can say I did not go to school for writing structure and workflow. How about you guys?
No, no, I've never studied anything like that before. I think by reading a lot, you sort of get the hang of it. I mean, that's the best way to learn how to put stuff on the page properly. Do a lot of reading. Try not to read shit, basically. It's hard to know these days what's good and what's not. But
curating is almost a job and skill unto itself.
Exactly.
So go on.
Oh, I actually took a course at the University of Washington. It was a literary fiction course. So it was good for me to learn story structure, and you meet with other writers and kind of figure out how. I didn't really understand, for example, the concept of the subplot and how story structure really works. That's how you avoid a lot of poorly written books where for example, one of the concepts I learned was stories are conflict driven. If you don't have conflict, then of some kind or tension, the story doesn't move forward. That's the fuel for a story is conflict. And so that's why a lot of stories or movies don't work, is because there's no conflict really going on.
Gotcha, yeah.
I'll let other people, Nikolai.
You can give an example if you want.
I'll give an example from two different movies that had Humphrey Bogart in them. One of them was Casablanca, and the other one was To Have and Have Not. So they were both. To Have and Have Not was kind of styled after Casablanca. They were trying to get the same thing. And it's a good movie, but it wasn't as good of a movie, and it doesn't end with as good of an ending as Casablanca. And one of the reasons is because there's no conflict between him and the leading lady. Like, there's no tension between them. that really. There's nothing. There's no critical choice to be made at the end of the movie. It's just a straightforward film in terms of the plot. Whereas in Casablanca, he's torn over different desires and he has to make a choice. And so that's why conflict is the key for having a good story, where you have to make a choice and there's no going back to what was before.
Gotcha. Nikolai, you were going to make a comment?
I was just going to say that to answer that question, like obviously I never went to never did any courses or anything like that. As I said before, English is not even my first language. But I've read or I try to read books about writing, and I found them not helpful much, except one piece written by Stephen King. It's called On Writing. And it's not about writing so much. I think it's more about the mindset of a writer. What are you supposed to do as a writer and things like that. So, but obviously you pick up, as you go along, you pick up things which just TJ just mentioned from different sources. And that's pretty much all you need to know is what makes a story successful. And as TJ mentioned, there's a few things. And one of them is, the major one is the conflict. It has to have a tension of some kind in the story to drive the story from point A to point B to point C.
Yeah.
But as I tried several books, like, I don't know, 6, 7, 10, I think it actually constrains your creativity. There is a danger of falling into some kind of a formula how to write stuff, and that's where courses might, wouldn't say that they will, but they might create a problem for you as a writer, especially if you are an experienced writer, to put some kind of framework on you before you even started writing, and you begin to think, oh, I need to follow this, I need to follow that, where is this, where is that, and then it will probably even be a stumbling block in your creative process. So I would probably recommend anyone who's trying to start writing, just start writing first, and then later on you will discover what you've done wrong and you will correct over time. So it basically a time-consuming process. You will have to learn what to do and what not to do and how to do things, and it takes time. Maybe course of some kind may help in a sense of shortening this time, and it also depends, I guess, on who is teaching the course. So if the teachers are good teachers, maybe that would be helpful. But as Barry also mentioned, I think the best source of information is just books. You just read books and see how others have done it, and especially if it's obviously a good book, but also bad books. In bad books, you learn how not to do things and how to avoid those things that make the story boring or something like that. So it's course would probably not be the answer, and you will not become a writer because you've done a course.
I mean, the utility of taking a course, I suppose, is avoiding things like beginner mistakes. If anybody engages in a creative process and their first thought when creating is to just follow a course, I mean, those people are beyond our help to begin with. So courses are valuable to people who have some sort of creative potential, is that they can make use of, okay, here we're going to avoid these beginner mistakes. Or it could just be advice of the mundane variety, where somebody tells me, okay, like, I'm writing pulp. If I open up Eyes of the Forest, I will find on basically every single page, with very few exceptions, either dialogue or fighting. There's always some kind of action, or people are talking about action and giving you clues as to action that's to come. Or maybe on occasion give you a little bit of a false start, and then action of a different variety happens. But there's always, throughout writing that book, I was following a little bit of a maxim where I was going, okay, and I'm going to check this page now to see if there is fighting or talking. And if there isn't one of those two things, I'm going to really scrutinize it and say, can I get away with this? Can I get away with leaving my maxim for a moment? And those exceptions tend to be things which spice up the writing a little bit. It spices up the user experience. So that's the value of going through. If you have the opportunity to go through a course and you have the opportunity to avoid certain beginner mistakes. And I'll say this, I did not take any courses, but I really wish that I had at some point. Because if there might have been things that I could avoid. Like if somebody had told me from the get-go, stop using the word that in everything. That is a really easy word to just kind of default to and populate every single page with, every single paragraph with. And it gets repetitive and monotonous, and it can make you lazy if you keep doing it. If somebody had told me that from the beginning, hell, that would have been lovely. I'd have to do a lot less editing when I ended up releasing Eyes of the Forest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Coming back to that, actually, as I was listening, I was thinking, about courses and basic and just learning from others. And then interesting, one of the mistakes when I was writing that memoir, and I probably spent a bit more time on this because it was a recent conversation with the publisher I had. That memoir I was writing, as I started writing, I had very little experience in actual writing. I did, as I said, spend a huge time on the internet debating people and stuff like that, but the actual writing wasn't part of it. So as I look back on those series of memoirs, I can see the progression, where I started. And then the last one in particular is completely different to the first one. The style I actually changed the point of view. I switched to a different point of view at some point, which nobody noticed. And it was funny how nobody noticed. But anyway, one of the things that I learned from others was dialogue. Like a lot of writers were saying, without dialogue, your writing is dead. Kind of, and so I was using a lot of dialogue in that memoir. And one problem I was facing all the time is because the events that I'm describing had happened 30 years ago. Like we're talking late 70s, 80s, late 80s, this period of time. So a long time ago. Well, one problem you have with this sort of stuff is that you don't remember who said what. No matter how good your memory, you remember the event, what happened, but who said what is completely gone. So I had to, and I told this to my publisher up front back then, that this kind of stuff is obviously has to be recreated because I don't remember who said what. So, but there was a lot of dialogue in the memoir. Now, recently, literally a couple of months ago, as a result of that conversation we had previously on Masculine Geek, and when I was trying to finish that memoir, I approached a publisher directly because he actually was following me. That's not going back to Twitter. He was following me on Twitter for a long time, and I thought, well, he's following me for a reason, right? So he probably knows some of my work. So I approached him directly via Twitter, and we started exchanging emails. I said, let's publish this thing that I did not finish, and I sent them the link to what's available on the internet. The whole thing is available on the internet, and he loved it. He said, "That's fantastic. Obviously, I heard about you from others, but I haven't read it. Now that I'm reading it, it's fantastic. I love it." But he said, "There's always a but, right?" And that was the second person. That was the second person who asked me this. I don't remember now who was the first, but he asked me, "Is this real?" He said, "Is this fiction or a memoir?" And it's clear from the go, it's a memoir. So because that was the second person who asked me, and actually told him in these emails as I was pitching my book to him, I said, this memoir has a style of a novel. So even though it reads like a novel, it's a memoir. So he asked me, is it real? Because some of the stuff there is not like fantastic or anything like that, but it's strange. A few things that happen there, they're kind of strange, and probably some people wonder if they actually happened, like this incident with finding a lot of cash almost on the road that fell right in front of me, stuff like that, and other things. So I said, of course it's real. Like I wouldn't pitch it as a memoir if it was a novel. And then I went back, and I actually was wondering before why some other guy asked me if it's real or not. So I started thinking about it. Why? Even though it reads like a novel, but why people might be asking? Because why it might be not true. It's a fiction, and I discovered the reason for that is because there is lots of dialogue. Like a typical memoir is a narration of events without much or even at all of dialogues. Because usually the events that happens in the memoir have happened long time ago. So it was packed with dialogue, and I discovered a thing, and I actually told him that. I said the problem I think with and the result of this conversation was, and he said, as much as I like what you had written, I think it will be a hard sell because people would not understand if it's a fiction or a memoir. Sell in the sense of he's just an agent. Even though he has his own publishing kind of business, he said it will be a hard sell because I don't know how to pitch it myself. Like, is it a memoir or is it a fiction? And I said, what if I go back and edit the whole thing and remove dialogue as much as possible and make it more narrative, so to speak? And he said, yeah, go ahead, do it, and send me just one chapter how you've done it, and then we'll take it from there, which I've never done because, as I said, I decided not to. So going back to that discussion of what we learn and how we learn to write, there are these pitfalls, like everyone is saying the dialogue is crucial, but in my case, it actually kind of, in a sense, ruined the chance of this thing being published. And I only spoke to actually two publishers, one way long ago, who said that the Australian market is too small for my book. And this second one said that I don't know how to pitch it. So there are these interesting pitfalls you can fall into by following someone else's advice, religiously, so to speak, or blindly, I would probably say, not religiously, but blindly. You have to judge what are you doing before you decide. That's what the problem is with the advice, is that you start following it blindly and then you fall into this kind of things. Meantime, if I was doing it on my own accord, so to speak, without any influence from outside, from other writers, probably I wouldn't done it this way. But then again, it probably wouldn't be as interesting because people were really, really enjoying it because it was like a novel. So there was a plot, there was a storyline, there were events happening one after another, and it kind of was driving the story ahead. But when it came to actually pitching it for commercial publishing, they said, look, we don't know what to do with it because it sounds like a novel, even though it's a memoir. So there is this kind of things interesting that you can discover later on, that you did it in with the idea of helping your story to go along, but then it just bites you in the ass later on.
Like, wait a minute, I'm doing this wrong from a commercial standpoint. Yeah.
So
okay. No, is that how you think you're going to finish it, from a narrative, less dialogue stance?
if I were to finish it, yes, I actually even before what is available now on the internet is edited heavily. Like I've removed probably 20,000 words out of it, and most of it was dialogue. And obviously I had these dialogues with my friends discussing things, but they just went on for too long and not detailed, but it doesn't sound right when as a reader, when you realize when someone asks themselves a question, well, this guy is writing in 2020, 21, describing events that happened in 85, 84. Is it possible, realistic, that he remembers all this detailed conversation? And the answer is no. So I made them up. And it's not made them up totally, but I had to go back in my memory and basically based on the event that happened, I had to make up the dialogue.
Yeah.
And that's the problem every memoir, I think, writer faces, is that, well, how do you recreate those dialogues? Because you cannot remember who said exactly what.
Yeah.
And so I removed a lot of it, but there's still plenty. And if I were to finish it, I'll probably even have to go and trim more to remove even more and turn them into narrative instead of he says and she says, just describe the scene, so to speak, and move on. Something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I want to shift it back to like the creative process too. Like, do you guys have once you have an idea, like this is something I want to write, and I have this idea for a story or a novel or what have you, do you outline anything at all? Do you have anything like bullet points, or just because for myself, from Tesla and Malone Lightning's Call, I do something called story beats, which is very similar to what they do with script writing. Because when I was writing that and I had the idea in my head, I almost I was playing the scenes in my head as I was writing as if it was a movie. So it made sense for me to say, okay, I'm going to do 10 chapters, 12 chapters. And then I would take each chapter and write a paragraph or two, what the general scene was and what was going to happen in that chapter. Is that something you gentlemen do or no?
I've always done the same process where I start out with a working title. I come up with a summary of.
Holy shit! You come out with a title right out of the gate. I have admiration for you, because I struggle with that. Working title. Okay, I don't even come up with that shit. That's the working title.
Well, on a lot of books, the first thing I come up with often is the title. Like the title is the first thing in the book for me. Like it's summarizing. Now, there's sometimes where I've changed it or I didn't like the title, but I really think that for me, if you get the title right, it's the rest of it can kind of move forward. But I also come up with all the different characters and just start throwing out ideas for that. One of the lessons that I learned from my literary fiction class is that that's also a place where you drop a lot of ideas, and then you've got to go purify it of cliches, of predictability, something that's trite, or something that's just been done before. Because a lot of times what we think are inspirations, or we come up with ideas for books, they're really from something else that we've seen before. And it may be from something that you didn't even internalize explicitly. That's why this is why I actually really I try not to read a lot of modern fiction often, because I don't want it to rub off on me. I don't want to be copying someone else's stuff. So that's another. So I write out, and then I start outlining each chapter, so that I come up with a summary of like what something needs to happen in this chapter, and it needs to end with an unresolved issue.
Gotcha. Okay. How about you, Barry? Same thing?
There's very little planning goes into chaos that I put together. I try to, I suppose, my mind works in scenes, and when I'm putting something together, it's sort of like scene at a time, as opposed to, I don't look at the big picture. Whether that's because I can't, I don't really know, but I sort of just tackle scene at a time. I don't actually know what's going to happen until the very end. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. One thing I have noticed, though, I've never had trouble ending something. So I'm not going back to the wordy sort of lengthy sort of stuff. That's never something that I've had to deal with. I just run out of energy, to be honest. It's just at the end of the line, my brain is pretty much shut down.
You're fried.
I'm fried. It's a walk away. Yeah, so I don't. Obviously, I suppose from a orthodox perspective, having no plan and not sort of marking stuff out or knowing where you're going is probably not the best way to approach things. But I'm a terrible I'm a terrible planner with this stuff. I mean, I've tried it before and it just has never worked for me. So I mean, we all work differently, and I guess what works for some people doesn't necessarily work for others. And
Okay. That's funny. How about you, James? Are you a what they call a plotter or a pantser or a plotter?
So I will typically begin writing kind of as if I was writing comics, and I'll begin setting up situations I will ignore. Generally speaking, I'll generally ignore any kind of dialogue or anything of that sort, and I will just go into situations and maybe character moods. I'll write up a couple descriptions, things that I can connect to on an emotional or a visual level. I might make something in Cinema 4D or some other motion graphic software that I can kind of connect to visually. Once I begin writing itself, I'll usually be a few chapters in, and then I will take a step back after meandering through the wilderness for a little while, and I'll hit up I'll hit up my marker board, or I'll hit up this graph paper that I hang on my wall, and I'll just start writing things down. And like, these are scenes that I would like to have in my book. How do I get there?
Gotcha.
Is it practical to get there? Is there a benefit to getting there? Is there something else I could be doing that would be time better spent? Or that would increase the quality of the work? And if that is the case, I'll begin moving in those directions, and I'll take another step. Once I get there, I will take another step back, and I will look over the process I got from point A to point B and say, okay, is there something in this journey from point A to point B that is untapped potential that I could have made better, that would have made a better point B to begin with? Had I focused on it? And that's kind of my process. Is my editing and my plot points sort of go together insofar as I will start off. I have usually no idea where it is I'm going to finish. I'll figure that out halfway through the book, and I will do these concentric loops back around in editing and adjusting plot points and deciding on whether or not this is the book I want to tell, or if this is a worse version of something that I already stumbled upon if I just gave it more attention.
Yeah. Okay. How about you, Nikolai? You have an outline or?
No, I'm like Barry. I tried to outline, and I found myself writing an outline. Like you just get buried in outlining stuff. When I started writing that thriller, I had no idea where I was going. I had just this framework of a generic idea of the story of this guy who got wrongly convicted on a crime he didn't commit. That's pretty much it. And then I would start adding other things to it without any plan whatsoever. But then, as I said, I went back and realized I went too far with some hacker-related stuff, and I removed it, and it became completely different things. And now that I'm into it again, I found that I need at least a little bullet point thing where, I don't forget who is doing what and who, and like things
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
roles of people. And I also find helpful to probably make a sketch of at least some characters and their backgrounds, and so I don't have to actually write.
Even down to their
backstory.
descriptions, like their eye color or their hair, like
Yeah,
stuff
try
like
that,
that.
but
Yeah.
for me it's too much detail. I just need to know where this guy is from, his background. Like, one of the guys is obviously going to be of a Russian background, a Jewish background, Russian Jewish background, a mathematician. So I did a bit of research on someone else, what it makes a successful mathematician, what they do in childhood, stuff like that. So at least at some point, I have a clear picture of each character, at least in my head, and a little bullet point in something that I use, like a journaling application that I use sometimes to keep track of what's going on. So it's not really plotting, but it's not a completely blank page where I just improvise as I go along. I would get lost otherwise. But a few helpful things that keep me on track with what I'm doing.
Gotcha. Yeah. I'm the same way. I have the small little like bullet point descriptions. After the second book, I didn't do the story beats like I did the first, but I still had a general idea how I wanted each chapter to pan out. Now the novella series that I'm serializing in Punch Riot, the Laserdiscs, the the detective pulp noir that has sort of science fiction set in 1950s. It's pretty good. I have to check it out. But that I have a general outline of how I want things to go. But even then, it's starting to write itself. Like the third chapter is completely off outline, as it were. So yeah, you start out with something just to get yourself jumpstart yourself to get started, and then you find that the story takes over itself. So
I have a question actually. Do you get someone else, like TJ mentioned in the very beginning? Do you get someone else to read your stuff as you're writing, or like do you exchange manuscripts with each other and get any feedback? Because for me, it's just completely solo kind of journey.
Well, that is an interesting question. I found that it's funny that it's something I remember hearing in the movie Midnight in Paris when the main character talks to goes back in time and talks to Hemingway, and the main character's like, "Oh, would you read my novel?" And he's like, "Well, no, I hate it." He's like, "We haven't even read it." He's like, "Well, if it's a good novel, I hate it. If it's a bad novel, I hate it, and if it's a good novel, I hate it even more." He's like, don't give your writing to other writers, because fundamentally, guys are envious and jealous. So that's a bit of an exaggeration, and that's maybe hyperbole, but there's some truth to that. So I'm not going to give my writing to someone piecemeal. I'm going to write it and then say, hey, whoever, like TJ's read my stuff and enjoyed it. A few other people, like what I call beta readers, that I know I can trust, that their ego isn't going to get involved in it, because I can't fucking stand that shit. That pisses me off. So it's like, I'm gonna write what I want to write. Here, I don't want minute little. No, tell me, did you enjoy it? Did it flow? Did it bog down? That's all I want to know. Don't give me. I don't want your ego involved. Just, did you like it? Did it flow? Thank you. You're done. You're fucking done. And that's it. Other than that, then no. We writers have huge, massive egos, and that's fine. We need them. But when it comes to critiquing other work, no, absolutely not. I don't think it's a good idea. Give your work to a non-writer, and fundamentally, that's what I do.
Okay, so you're giving.
Yeah, the problem is also writers are going to look at it as they would want to write it, but they're not you. And so that was one of the problems when I was in my literary fiction class. It was all a bunch of writers.
Nothing gets done.
At each other's work. And I was of the opinion that when I'm editing do I enjoy reading it?
Yeah.
or not. Whereas other people, like, they pretty much deconstructed other people's work. Like they saw writing as a very technically precise thing.
It's not. It's not a guy. It's not a handbook for like a jet plane, for fuck's sake. It's a novel. Just exactly. Did you enjoy it? Did it flow?
Yeah.
It's there's this line from the movie Finding Forrester where the author Sean Connery, rest in peace.
Yes.
He's talking about a professor at the kids' private high school, and he says, there are men like him who know the rules of writing, but they don't know how to write.
Well, just remember, TJ, those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach Jim.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, and it's
That's
horrible,
why he was in the movie.
True.
He's offered a position to teach writing, and he just goes.
He's like, no, absolutely no, fuck that noise. Yeah. So that's a good punch the keys. A fucking great movie.
So you would recommend, even though it's a good idea, but don't give your writing to other writers.
No, I would not fundamentally. Like I trust TJ and a few other people. Like I would probably give my work to you guys, but for the most part, but except for James, fuck him. No, I would give my. But after I'm done, like I wouldn't write a chapter and go, "Hey, go read." No, just do get it all out, throw it up, get the first draft out, and then give it to readers, because that writers are readers too, but give it to your audience, your readers. So you have some friends, and presumably we all have some friends that are just readers, and you give that to them. So right now I have a few other things that I've written that are almost finished. I'm like, to force myself to finish them, like, here, read this and let me know what you think, to readers. So yeah, what do you think, Barry?
I would never imagine that this gets on the way like egos. Like I thought writers would
no, they do
critique other writers' work based on what TJ said, based on technicalities. They would get into all kind of bullshit about plots and subplots and how you had written it.
Well, there's a bit of the gamma male ego in there. I had no
idea.
I've run across that so many times. I mean, that may just be anecdotal. I could be completely off base, and you guys go, "Fuck you, Vince. That's not true." I know writers that are fine. Okay, that's fine. But for me, no, I'm not doing it. I refuse. So, how about you, Barry? Do you run into that kind of shit?
Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, when I finished the Leather Cannon, I was looking at it and reading it just myself, and I was like, is this funny? That was my goal. Wanted it to be funny. That's basically it. If you have a laugh, if you're laughing,
it's funny, by the way. You guys have to pick it up. Yeah.
And that's all I wanted, and I wasn't sure. I mean, I was going through pages of it and thinking, shit, did I write that? That's really weird. I mean, there's parts of it. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced the same thing. You read something that you've read. Sorry, you read something you've written, and you can't actually remember writing the thing, and especially if it's weird. And I remember I just put it on my wife's Kindle, and I said, "Can you read this? Just read it. I've written this book." And she's going, "Holy shit, you've written a book."
That's awesome.
How did you write it? Then all you get all these fucking questions. How'd you write it? Oh, on my phone. Holy shit.
That's cool.
And she woke me up laughing, and
that's a good sign. Okay, that's cool.
I'm gonna try and sell this bastard. So, and that was sort of helped solidify it for me. But usually, I send. She's a reader. I send everything that I write to her, and usually whether she laughs or not, I still put it up on the site. But I usually take that as a good sign.
Okay, cool.
But some of it, there have been a couple that were just a bit too weird, and you can't win them all. That's
true. Yeah, it's the 80-20 rule rings true universally in almost everything we do.
Exactly,
it's really true. Yeah,
and I mean, the way I look at it is, if they don't find it funny, well, that's their problem.
That's an excellent attitude to take. Yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, no one's come to me and said, "Oh, it's shit." So I mean,
This is shit. This is absolute shit.
but you paid for it, motherfucker. So
That's right. Well, exactly. Who got the last laugh? Fooled you, didn't I?
That's
cool. That's fantastic. How about you, James? Do you give your stuff fundamentally to readers, or do you go ahead and give it to a writer and see what they think?
Neither so far. It depends on, though there's an exception when it comes to, how do I put this? There's an exception when it comes to tabletop work, because that's just, I mean,
that's different. Yeah, that's true.
But even the narrative bits, like the narrative fluff of tabletop mechanics, I'll run that by people to make sure that there's a fiction or fantasy that's being fulfilled in the desired fashion.
Oh, okay.
But when it comes to writing, for instance, Eyes of the Force, I think I only gave out like an individual chapter, and it was one that up until that point was not a part of the book. It was just something I was like, oh, well, this is happening contiguous with Eyes of the Forest, and it's happening at this moment, and I don't really know when it's going to fit in. And then later down the line, I figured out when it was going to fit in, and I ended up writing subsequent chapters that followed through on that story and tied it into what I consider the main plot of Eyes of the Forest. And
it's funny you say that, because I've done that myself, and I thought that I was the only one. Like I'll get the urge, like really? I had the scene in my head. I'm like, fuck, so I'll have like 1 or 2 pages. I'm like, I don't know where this goes. I'm gonna shoehorn that shit in, but I had my mind will jump ahead. Like I can see what the characters are doing 2 chapters away, and I need to get that out. And you've done that too, then, right?
I have a little bit. It depends on the situation. Like with my solo chapter, I had no idea where it was going afterwards. It's like, all right, this character this character comes from the world below, and they made it to the surface, and I suppose they fuck off. And then they made it to they made it to the realm of the Fae, and then I suppose they fucked off there. And then finally,
there's a lot of fucking going off in your
exactly.
Your okay, fantastic.
Exactly. It's key to writing tip. That's key to a good story. Yeah. But the time came where these characters were in proximity to one another, and I said, "Aha! Now I know what's going on here. Now I know what the importance of this character is." But I did not know beforehand. It was just, and occasionally those solo chapters will not make it in. Just writing them will, 1, be practice. 2, will help solidify the story, or solidify the style of whatever it is that I'm writing at that moment. And 3, will give me some additional outside context. It's a resource that I might be able to draw on later. But I do it first, and then maybe I get a benefit later.
Okay. Nice. Now I'm going to segue into drinking real fast, just because I'm drinking wine, and I saw TJ pick up his bottle. What do you got there, TJ?
I got a pale ale.
Okay.
But
cool.
I've what have I been? I was going to say something else. There's another type of beer that I've been. I was off. I took a break for a while, and now I'm going back into. The thing is though. There's. Speaking of writing, let's talk about drinking, right?
Well, that was my next topic of conversation. Yeah. It's like inspiration almost.
Don't edit. If you want to edit your book, don't drink.
Yeah, edit sober. But write buzz, but edit sober. Yeah.
Right. There's what your brain's not going to be able to function properly. You're not going to be able to think critically about, because when you're editing, there's a lot of different things that you're going to be editing. You're going to be editing the structure of the sentence. You're going to be editing grammar, spelling, punctuation. You're also going to be editing is this scene, like you can do great writing, but if the scene doesn't work out, you can't fix it. You can, as the saying goes, you can fix bad writing if the story's good, but the best writing in the world will not fix a bad story.
That's true.
You will be bored. That's why a lot of these writers are. You can tell some of the writers that were drinkers because their writing's interesting, right? Like Hemingway was a drinker. Who else was? Poe was high on cocaine.
Yeah. Oh, and Hemingway too wouldn't drink while he was writing. He would write at like 6 o'clock in the morning till around noon or so, and then go out drinking with his mob, his friends. Yeah.
Right, with his buddies.
Yep.
I think that for writing, you want whatever you're like. If I'm doing sort of a contemplative type writing or something that's more philosophical, I'll pull out my pipe and start smoking it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If I want to write something that has a little extra balls to it, I'll pull out some bourbon and start getting. And also, I'll listen to different types of music.
That was another question too. So a lot of this stuff is contextual too, based on the subject matter in hand.
Yeah, I want to. Depending on the story, I want to get into the mood, and the music is going, or whatever it is, whether it's beer or whatever. I want to be in the mood where I am thinking about and being able to convey that behavior in characters, because a lot of times people, this is another pet peeve I have, is where people think that you're writing about yourself. And that's what an amateur writer does. But a lot of times you have to put yourself in the perspective of someone else, and you have to be able, this is why narcissists kind of have a hard time, I think, writing different characters. Like I know some people who are not very good at empathizing with others, and that's why they're not good writers. They don't know how to write, because you have to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Others can't be pricks, but a lot of them are.
Yeah. Now, but you guys, to TJ's point, as far as like putting yourself in a certain mood for writing, as far as drinking or smoking a pipe or maybe a cigar, glass of wine, bourbon, maybe even a location. For me, there's been different locations that I'll go on a writing retreat. Like I would go to Gettysburg, and I wrote a significant portion of my work there in Gettysburg because I had to deal with a Civil War character. For me, that just made me closer to the character and just felt cool to write. It was a whole part of my writing process. Do you guys have the same thing, or do you just don't care what you write, or what you're drinking or eating? Any kind of inspiration, like even a muse, so to speak, whether that's a woman or the bourbon barrel.
I find for myself, boredom really kickstarts me. When there's nothing to do, or when there's nothing occupying my mind, that's when I start thinking about things, or start remembering stuff I may have seen or heard, and then work that around in my mind, and then I may rip the phone out, start typing away, or get on the keyboard, obviously. But in terms of that sort of inspiration or getting in the mood, I find when I don't have anything to do is usually when I have that time to think and go, oh shit, I could put that into a story, or that I can see that as a scene developing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. How about you, Nikolai?
I've tried, like, I think what works for me really, really well, if I get, at least it used to work for me really well, I didn't try it for a while, is I need to get out of the house, and I used to write in the library, and for some reason it just works for me really well when no one's from my household is around, and I'm sitting there by myself, surrounded by books. It kind of creates a bit of a, and we have here in Australia, at least in Brisbane, I haven't checked the Melbourne libraries yet, but in Brisbane, where I used to live, we had a very nice new library with very comfortable little these cubicles where you can hide from everyone and just work. I also written quite a few things while drinking a lot of wine. And it worked as well, especially when I had these deadlines, when I had to deliver those memoirs, usually on Monday morning. So I would be sitting, drinking a lot of wine on Sunday and trying to finish it. Recently, like, you will find this probably funny. About a year ago, I started smoking. Like, people, when I tell them that, at my age, I used to smoke when I quit cycling. I started smoking. That was 30 years ago, I guess, when I was 25, 24, and I smoked for maybe 3, 4 years, and then I quit because it was giving me headaches. And I haven't touched smoking since then. I would have a cigar or whatever. But about a year ago, for a reason sort of not related to what we're talking about, I started smoking. And I only smoke one brand of tobacco. I can't smoke cigarettes, like I hate them. But I find that this particular brand of tobacco, I really enjoy how it smells, how it smokes, and everything. So I find this when I write, I need to take breaks. Like I can't sit for a long time and just doing one thing. So I need to get up and do something. And that smoking really helps. I get out of the house because I don't smoke in the house. Get outside, and have this cigarette, and it really puts me back. Like when I'm writing, at some point I kind of get. I don't know if it's not boredom, but something happens when I get stuck and just don't want to write anymore. This is when I need to get up, get outside, and have a cigarette. Before I smoked, it would be coffee or wine. But then problem with wine, and in a sense with coffee, is that at some point when you're drinking too much wine, your mind stop functioning.
You're done. Yeah.
Yeah, you're done. And especially if it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, you feel a bit sleepy, and it
Oh shit!
it ruins everything. And coffee has different effects. You just can't have too much of it because it doesn't mess up your mind, but it messes up your nervous system, and it becomes a different kind of problem. But with cigarettes now, I find it's really helpful. Get out and have a smoke, and it's only short, like 5-10 minutes, but it gets me back on track, and I think about things that I'm writing, and when I go back, I'm kind of refreshed, and I keep and I can keep going again. And this actually also happens with work that I do for a living. The same thing, at some point I go, I can't do this anymore now. Like I need to get up and do that. So that's my little tricks. And I know it's probably not good for for health and all of these things, but I don't find actually it bothers me too much, like the smoking itself. Like I ride my bike and I don't find this. It's really strange, like going back to some of the things we've been discussing last time about what we believe and how propaganda makes our perception shape. Like obviously I wouldn't be so stupid denying that smoking is probably not a healthy habit to have, but I happen to believe it's not as destructive as they make us believe. I would probably qualify for some people. I think it's to do with maybe genetics. Some people get destroyed completely and very quickly, while we have plenty of anecdotal evidence where people live normally and smoke and all of that. So just to round it up, that's my little trick nowadays. I don't know what will be in the future. I find drinking whiskey and writing doesn't really work because it smashes me after 5-6 glasses of whiskey.
I'm going to refill my wine glass in a moment. Although I should say, let me clarify, but I finished the wine bottle. So now I have to. I will move into the whiskey that James and Aaron and I started last night.
Oh man!
Yeah, it's gonna be good stuff.
Very, very smoky taste.
It was almost like chewing on a piece of beef jerky. It was that smoky.
That's a pretty good comparison,
right? I'm like, wow, this is really fucking good. So, but how about you, James? You find yourself? We were talking about atmosphere and getting yourself in. different places, whether that's with a cigar or a pipe or a drink. You do the same thing, or just that doesn't even come into play?
I'll drink usually rum. I'll have coffee next to me, and I will pound those out. And I try to keep myself very well hydrated as well. So I am cycling through water, coffee, rum every few hours if I'm on a writing
Disaronno
in particular. Usually not Disaronno, actually.
You're not putting in your coffee?
Yeah, I find it screws me up sometimes.
Okay.
And on top of that, there's nicotine gum, which I'll just chew on that for about a half hour. Yeah, it's fun. I'll give myself nicotine poisoning on occasion, and that's, and once the cold sweats hit, I got to tell you, man, it's fantastic.
There you go.
And I'll sit there for the next hour wondering why my room temperature is about 200 degrees. And
I'm fucking cold.
And I will put myself, I'll use whatever I have next to me to put myself into some state that is off of my norm. Okay. Whatever that happens to be, whether it's way too much coffee, whether it's way too much to drink, or too much nicotine, or whatever, I will use that, and I'll ride it out for about an hour, and then I'll try to move on to the next thing. I'll give myself a roller coaster of highs and lows until I can.
Till you pass the fuck out.
yeah, until I'm sick of writing at that point.
Oh, that's funny. Now, I mentioned briefly what I would do is go on little writing retreats. Like there's one novel I've been slogging through for the past, I would say, almost 10 years now. It's almost finished, but one of the main peripheral character is his gravesite is here in New Jersey, in Bordentown. And I've gone to the graveyard, set up a collapsible picnic table, pulled out my iPad, and written at his grave, just because I'm writing scenes with him. He is in it and talking. So it's just, maybe some people may find that morbid, but I think that's fucking cool. And that atmosphere just helps me get into the story, and I like shit like that. That's the stuff I live for. So do you find yourself doing the same thing? Because you were talking about, Nikolai, you go out, you have to get out of your house, you go to the library, and you find that's more inspiration and nourishing for you as a writer.
It's interesting, like what you said. It really I would love to do stuff like that, it's really interesting, writing on the grave of a guy you're writing about.
Well, out of respect, not right on it, but I am next to it. There's some
it
space.
Doesn't matter.
But
Doesn't matter. No, it's great. Like TJ mentioned music. I also tried, like, obviously you hear this kind of stuff coming from different people. I tried heavy metal. I tried this little background music, whatever. It just does not work for me at all.
Doesn't work? No.
Yeah, heavy metal maybe a little bit, because I was writing some scenes in that memoir. It probably helped a little bit, creating this mood. But for me, it has to be silent, or at least not completely silent, but music would probably doesn't work for me at all.
Gotcha.
So I should probably try one of those things that you just mentioned, graveyards and stuff like that.
Yeah, graveyards, different locations, parks. I've done that out in the Pine Barrens. It gets me out of my head in the house. It's a different location. It's just cool as fuck for me. I like doing that. It's so you're incorporating hiking and the different location, almost like just out and about and doing my thing, and I'm writing at the location. Especially if it's poignant, because it's pertinent to the story. Like in Gettysburg, do the same thing. It's like I'm writing about a Civil War soldier as one of the characters, so I'm in Gettysburg. That's just cool to me. I like doing that. This is part of the fun. You travel out there, you know why you're there. Then you stop, you go get something to eat, you get something to drink, you talk to people. Maybe you meet a girl, maybe you go on a date, whatever. The whole experience, setting up an experience for yourself centered around your writing. That's a charge for me. So, yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I like that shit. Yeah, that's I like that
Yeah,
shit.
actually, when I was when I started writing that thriller, the events are happening in at least the beginning of it happens in New York, and I've been to New York a couple of times, but obviously I don't know New York. So to make it real, I had to use like Google Maps and Google Earth to go through streets, like picking up locations based on those sort of things. And also, I find it's really, what technology allows us to do nowadays is, how would you do it, 50 years ago if you've never been to New York and you have to write about events that are happening in New York? You would be in a very difficult situation, even though I think from memory someone done it, like writing about um, things that happen in completely different city where the writer has never been to. But this experience in itself, exploring New York with Google Earth, is in itself, like an interesting experience, and you learn so much. So it's a bit like you going on a graveyard and sitting writing there.
Yeah.
Except, like for me, I think even though I have like if I take a laptop with me, I wouldn't see anything on the screen because it's not designed to be exposed to the sun.
Mm.
So it has to be, I guess, an iPad, and my son has an iPad, so I need to try that. It's actually quite interesting idea, especially graveyard, where it's complete silence.
I'll send you the link to the collapsible mobile picnic table.
Yeah,
it's really cool, and then you can use it for other things too. But it's good. They say 4 people can sit at it, but that's if you want to be a sardine, it's good for 2 people to sit opposite each other at other ends, and they can spread their work out and do whatever. So it's perfect
just
for one person.
We obviously need a chair as well, no?
It comes with the bench seats that are built into the table. The way it's set up, it's really cool. The design, and it just collapses on itself. It's probably about this wide and maybe 4.5 feet, almost 5 feet long. And you just put it in the trunk of your car, and away you go.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I just leave it in the back of my in the hatchback. So it's good stuff.
Send me the link.
I'll send you the link to it. Yeah. I've had it for a few years. I have to go through my Amazon history, purchasing history, but yeah, it's pretty cool. So, James, do you do anything like that?
In regards to what, seating arrangements, or in regards to
getting out of the house to write somewhere else, just for inspiration, or just to fucking get out of the house and write?
No. That's why I'm interested in drugs. Is
fair enough.
just working with the, I think it's more cost effective and things of that sort.
Gotcha.
I did, while I was writing one of my first big tabletop supplement, Airships Brackets, was I actually did get out of the house pretty often. I would go to Starbucks and I would just pull out the tablet and write in Google Docs and then bring it home and port it over to the whatever markdown program I was using at the time. And that was okay. I liked not having the distraction of being able to go play video games. But then that gets back to the, whether or not I'm taking an SSRI or if I'm just, overloading myself with nicotine or alcohol or something of that variety. I tend to focus on something that is going to put me in a different state of mind rather than a place that's going to put me in a different state of mind, which I am not an advocate for by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not recommending that to anybody else. That is merely a personal preference. And I think one that will change once I'm out in New Jersey.
Oh, where'd everybody go?
I think Vince had to step away for a second.
Yeah.
Oh, he probably had to deal with prostate cancer check.
Exactly. Just sitting there right by the computer.
Oh,
yeah.
So
before we move on, TJ, this has been living in my head for the past 20 minutes. At least, maybe. Oh no, we've been going for a while. It's been for
Yeah.
like the past hour or so. When you were discussing the tendency to get overwordy and things of that sort, I was actually reading the stringers, and I was surprised at how quickly you blew by the prism that folks were using. Folks had implanted in them or whatever.
Right.
And it was literally just a line or two of description, and then everything else was context clues. This is what this thing does. It gave me sweet Fahrenheit 451 vibes. I really liked it.
Oh yeah. Oh, thanks. I'm glad you. That was one of the things I was trying to get at with that book, was not really go into details. It's called exposition, where you explain or give context as the writer. I just wanted to explain it by what they were doing, and not really go into where you almost break the fourth wall when you're doing anything set in the future, where it's like, this is how we do things here. This is how this is how different this world is. This is how they do it, rather than just showing the world as it is and allowing the reader to learn about stuff just by watching people.
Right. Like if I, I'm going to have a story section that involves this flower, and I can either open up the fantasy biology textbook and explain to the reader what this flower is, or I can make it relevant to,
So actually, there's one of the things other things I learned in my literary fiction class was giving. It's a big word, and I've never learned how to pronounce it, but it's the idea of conveying a sense of realism or truth. Verisimilitude. What is it called?
Verisimilitude.
Yes,
verisimilitude.
And an example of that, he was showing a passage from a book that was written about around 9/11. It was a novel about a young Arab Muslim who is being groomed to become a terrorist, like some sort of bombing guy, whatever. But the way he talked and the way that the writer described him and his thoughts, his inner thoughts, the critique was, this is a non-Muslim writing about a Muslim, because you don't go into that much precise detail. It's kind of like with like if you've been fighting, if you're in the military and you've been fighting or stationed in an area, you develop slang. Like with in the movie Black Hawk Down, where the new guy shows up and he's like, "So how's Mogadishu?" And the guy says, "Nobody calls it Mogadishu. It's called the Mog," right? They cut it down very short. So it's the same thing with people. When if you're writing about somebody who's a part of an identity, you don't use the official terms. You don't use the technical terms. You use a lot of slang or not acronyms, but just other ways of describing stuff. And so that's the importance for when you're writing about certain topics, where you need to actually have the voice or narration match the identity involved. I'll give an example in my books, and Nikolai will appreciate this. Because there's a Russian in my novel. Part of it is being told from his perspective. So I use his first name and his middle name when describing him from his perspective, but the other people in the book use his last name, because I hope I'm correct on this, but there's a formality when you use someone's last name, but when you know someone personally, you use their first and second name. Like, for example, in Dr. Zhivago, he's called Yuri Andreevich by people that he knows, but nobody calls him, or people who know him officially know him Zhivago. Good. Nikolai, am I correct in that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. One nuance with Russian names is that we don't have middle names. What you, huh?
Oh, they called that like patria.
Paternal.
Yeah, paternal. My bad.
Yeah. So this, what you would describe as a second name, is the name of the father. So I'm Nikolai Nikolaevich because my father's name is also Nikolai. So that's why I'm Nikolai Nikolaevich, because of wife. And you're absolutely correct. How you use names in Russia is very important um, I guess, nuance of our sort of social relationships is that you do not, under any circumstances, call anyone by their first name unless you really, really know them. And if you don't know them, you use the first and the paternal name. And with the surname, it's completely different how you would use that. It's almost never actually used,
Right.
unless you kind of use an official form of communication, for example, in politics, or you can call someone Mr. Razovayev or whatever, or other circumstance. So it's a bit, yeah, you need to know those nuances, and I hope you did.
Yes,
You did
because that
know.
was the one thing I was doing in the book. Is I was I was reading a lot of Russian literature, but I was also studying a lot of Russian culture for this character, and that's when I learned about the name differences. And so I go, okay, he's not going to be referring. There's no inner dialogue, but he's not going to be seen as his identity is not going to be his last name like the other characters who are Americans. He's going to be thinking of himself and his friend as through the paternal, his first name and paternal name. And so I had to go back and change all that in the book because this was also when I was learning this stuff in this class where I go, okay, well, a Russian's going to be thinking about himself differently and describing things differently than the American on this stuff. This is where you almost have to do a lot of studying. This is why young writers really should just go and experience life and learn about stuff before they start writing, because you wouldn't even know any of that. So it's hard to write about things outside of what you know unless you've done some research on it.
Yeah, it's very important, which is why I would never go into this sort of stuff that I don't really know about much, and then make a fool out of myself.
Right.
You know, showing my ignorance and lack of knowledge. It's very dangerous, and it's very easy to do. You know, you think you know, while you actually don't, and that's what you've pointed out with names. Like, someone who knows this will see through this kind of stuff right away and go, no. This is how, I always enjoy, I guess, listening to commentators, especially political commentators, talk about, Russia. Some of them know their stuff a little bit, while most don't really, and then they go on pontificating about stuff that they have no idea about. Their knowledge comes from just generic mass media sources of information. So yeah, it's very important, like, not making these kind of mistakes, because they just very dangerous, and they will ruin your book if you don't know what you're doing. Like what you said before about the Muslims characters, you need to know your stuff, otherwise you just
Right, and that's why it's so hard. Yeah, like at 22 years old, or when I started out as being a writer, I didn't know how to write dialogue. I didn't know how to write about, because there's just a lot of things that you have to know that people take for granted, which is why a lot of, I think, young writers struggle, because they're only going to write about what they are aware of, and that's very limiting. It's limiting not just in the type of stories you can tell, but the type of characters you can create, because you can't explore anything beyond the your emotional capacity, like your capacity to understand certain emotions. And there's somewhere you're not going to understand it unless you've really experienced it. Where
you have blinders on.
Well, you can write about something superficially, and as opposed to really going deep down into something. I mean, a 22-year-old.
It helps to have lived it, what you're talking about.
Oh,
Right,
absolutely.
right. I think
Absolutely.
that very rarely can
Yeah.
a writer write about something that they really don't understand well and be successful. I mean, people do it all the time. We call it the media, but
People certainly try. Whether or not they figure it out is unfortunately a different matter.
right.
Yeah. So, Okay. Oh, I threw up that that folding mobile picnic table in the chat, and I also put it in the private chat as well. So it's for $78. You can't beat it, and it's paid for itself. So it's pretty cool to have. I suggest you guys get it, whether you're doing writing or not.
Yeah,
it's a good
pretty
thing
cool.
to carry with you. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't sit 4 obese people at it. I mean, that's not gonna. Yeah. It's just not. It's not gonna.
Well, there are
work.
very few things
But,
that you would sit 4 obese people at.
Exactly. You don't want to do. You don't want to do that. Yeah. Just kind of stay away from 4 obese people anyway. So. But,
Rules for life.
yeah, exactly. It's life's too short to dance with fat chicks.
I was a little bit inspired by Barry's tweets about naked bodies and all of that, looking at yourself in the mirror.
You're right.
And I was actually going to say something about it, but then decided not to.
It would have been cool to have a comment on
No,
it.
I was just going to say to just general sort of followers, if you're planning to start on a weight loss program, I think the best place to start is to get naked and look at yourself in the mirror. Even probably
before and after photo, yeah.
Before you start, even a better point is that will start you at some point on a weight loss program if you look often enough in the mirror and ask yourself, is it going to change or not?
Yeah, it's like would I fuck that? Ask yourself that question.
Yeah, just Buffalo Bill the situation and be fine.
Exactly.
You're like, oh yeah, you know what? I need to lose some weight there. So,
Dude, that was me looking at the Periscope last night. I'm like, aside from the fact that my face was stuck in the grin of a fat retard for about half the night, my cheeks are still tired because I still don't know how to control my facial.
That's a great byline for a book. Stuck in the face of a fat retard.
Yeah, for something like 6 hours. But afterwards, I was like, shit. I lost 5 pounds last month. I took about a week to get it all back out of spite, and yeah, now it's time to go back on it. And the reason I bring that up is, if you as a creative are not working out in some capacity, you need some variety of exercise for this to occur. You are not working at like 100% capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain is it's only something like 10% of your body mass or whatever. It might be less than that. I can't remember the exact percentage. I don't know why I thought of 10%, but in any case, it takes up like a third of your oxygen.
Yeah.
If you are not cycling enough oxygen to your brain on a regular basis and making sure that the blood gets up there, cleans everything out, flushes everything, all the gunk that can accumulate in places that don't get enough.
Yeah.
You're cutting yourself short. You're cutting yourself short. So if you are looking in the mirror and saying, God damn it, I'm too fat. There's no point. I might as well just live out the next 20 years as fat and see what work I can get done. Yeah. Don't do that, because your work's gonna be less quality if you don't worry about getting swole just yet or whatever. Start working out now. Get the mental benefits at the very least. Don't cut yourself off from those.
Exactly. Now, do you, after you're done like a writing session, as it were, like you sit down, maybe you're sitting down for half an hour to an hour, do you find it mentally draining for yourselves? Like exhausting? Like I do need a nap. Maybe not a FAP, but you need a nap. So, Aaron Clary, that's a whole different beast right there. So, right. You guys find like, this is work. Like when it's like this was draining. This was taxing. This was mentally taxing. Or do you guys just like, this is fun, and I'm just doing what I'm doing.
I don't find it taxing. I don't know. Maybe because I'm in relatively good physical shape, so it doesn't really, I guess, mentally even doesn't affect me that much. My problem is the opposite one, is to actually make myself work as hard as I would like, and I hope this little session would change that and inspire me, at least for a period of time, to start doing heavy
Yeah,
duty
yeah.
writing. So my problem is the opposite one. It's how to make myself do more.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So in terms of physical shape, it's pretty okay,
Hmm.
especially in the last couple of months, and I started riding more. But no, I don't find it taxing in any way at all.
Okay.
For some reason, I don't know.
That's good. Yeah.
Especially if there were a few instances where I would have really long sessions of what I call long is like 6-7 hours of writing, and
Mm.
it's not necessarily produces a huge amount of words, which, as we've said at the beginning, it's probably not a good idea to count them in the first place anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
But in terms of length, sometimes, yeah, I've done quite long ones, like 12, 14 hours when I had to, as I said, finish, deliver on time things. And that was
Uh-oh.
No,
We've lost him.
we lost Nikolai. He went into the aether. Nikolai. Testing. Bueller.
He's frozen. He's frozen.
He's frozen. His internet took a shit. That's right. I happened to me. It happens once every broadcast. My internet just dumps out for about 15 seconds. So how about you, Barry? Is writing mentally or physically taxing for you? Or?
Yeah. There's not a lot I can. I think the maximum I can get done is a few thousand words in a day, and then I've got to tap out because I mean, mentally you're fried by that
Exactly,
stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I try not to. I mean, if I'm sitting down and I'm working on something, I aim for 1,000 words because that's
Okay.
usually where I can walk away with my faculties intact. Otherwise, if I'm on a roll, I might try to push 2,000 to 3,000 out. But once I hit 3,000, I'm babbling retard on the page. Really, I mean,
I gotcha. Now, I know Hemingway often said that he would stop writing when he knew what was going to happen next and refill the well. So when he came back the next morning, he had somewhere to go back into. Do you find yourself that's the same way, or do you stop when you're finished?
Yeah,
for that day.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, yeah, I probably just aim for sort of like that. I mean, if I know what's going to happen next, probably done a bit too much thinking about it, and yeah, it's time to step away. But typically, I know it's probably not the best way to do it, but I do aim for a word count more than anything. I could feel good about myself. Everyone else can get fucked,
Right.
But,
cool.
Yeah, I mean, at a minimum, I'll do 500.
Okay.
Like we were talking about before. I mean, sitting down to doing 500 every day is not always practical because, you miss a day and then you forget what you're writing about. So,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Day at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. How about you, TJ? Is writing can be mentally draining for you, or?
I'd say editing is actually the most draining.
Okay.
That's where I'll go through a page or two, and I'm just, I think I get drained when I realize no matter how many times I've gone over the same section, I still see improvements.
Yeah.
It's kind of this feeling that you're digging a hole and it's filled, 5 seconds later, so you're not actually accomplishing anything. But, some diamonds are rougher than others.
That's true. That is true. It's a good point. And you, James, because I agree with you, TJ. The writing part, to me, that's fun, and I don't usually have a problem mentally or physically, but the editing process is like completely tedious for me, and I absolutely hate it. I look to it with dread. It's really one of my Achilles heels. How about you, James? Is that the same for you? Writing is this is nothing, this is fine, this is good, and then the editing is just like you're slogging through it. Is that the same for you?
Not, I think it's usually, I mean, anything that has to do with writing will capture me in fits and spurts, and it will throw me back out into the wild. I usually have to stand up about every 15 minutes, just go out and do things, because I'm writing about things that are fun to experience, that are fun to do. It's like, oh man, I want to go back out. I'm writing about this is a scene in which the character climbs something. Man, I want to go out and climb something. I want to go hacking again. I want to go shoot something again. I want to introduce myself. I met off the street again. You know,
Yep.
Let's get into a fight. Let's ride some horses. I've gone through at a young age. I've gone on a lot of adventures so far, and I kind of want to go back to those whenever it is I'm writing. When I'm editing, on the other hand, I get much more technical and I get much more focused. I don't enjoy it per se. But I'm usually going back over, and I will rewrite entire. I will delete a chapter of something I've written, and I will do it on the fly, and I will write and add something else because I've gotten sufficient. It goes back to my writing style of these concentric loops. I'm going back over and deciding, wait, I can just do something spectacularly better than this. Let me force myself to do that, and that's when I really tend to zero in. Insofar as mental or physical exhaustion, it's usually beyond the fact that I find it often tedious and boring, depending on what's going on, which is where the writing style of something happens helps. You know, fighting or it's either fighting or dialogue. Those tend to be fun.
Yeah.
I will, instead of suffering any kind of exhaustion, I will find that my ability to talk to other people goes completely out the window. I will not be able to express my thoughts in a fashion that makes any kind of sense. My words and my vernacular will get all screwed up, like I put them through a blender of some variety. And it happens all the time. Basically, anytime that I've spent time on a writing binge, I will not be able to convey meaning to another person, especially not via text.
Gotcha.
And that's the one side effect, if you will.
That's an interesting side effect, actually. I like it.
It screws up so many Tinder gigs for me. They're like,
I'm sure. Like, I just had a writing gig. I can't see you. Get the fuck out of here. Oh, that's funny. All right, we're coming up on the 2 hour and 20-minute mark, so I want to sort of wind down. Is there anything you want? Any of you wanted to add to the writing pile, as far as maybe anyone out there who is thinking about writing their first novel or doing anything creative in the writing field? You have offer any advice or suggestions or don't do it or anything of that ilk?
I would say just get stuck into it. I mean, people I think tend to make excuses for themselves, don't they? Oh, I can't do that today because of blah blah blah. I don't have the right pen or some other bullshit. I mean, I wrote my book on a bloody phone, so I mean, there's no excuses.
I was really. After that, if they use you as a good yardstick, like, nah, you shut the fuck up and write. Because look at this. This guy did his novel is a great novel on a phone. So you probably have no. It's true.
I mean, the worst thing that can happen is your thumbs tend to hurt a bit after a while, but when you write on a phone. But I mean, if you want to do it, I mean, there really is. Do what you got to do, but there really is nothing stopping anybody just starting. I mean, it may take longer for some people than others, but I mean, ultimately, with all this technology that we've got these days, I mean, you got a phone, you got an iPad, you got even a pen and pencil will work, but just get stuck into it.
Absolutely. How about you, Nikolai? What would you say?
I completely agree. In fact, I would even expand a little bit on that idea that just Barry mentioned. I think writing is one of those things that you can, if you feel like you want to write, that is a signal that you probably have something in you built in for whatever reason and by whatever means But writing is one of those things that literally doesn't take much to start doing. As Barry said, all you need is a pencil and paper, if that's what you prefer. At the very minimum, obviously, you need something to write with. But if you want to be a little bit more sophisticated, I guess nowadays, I mean, we have so many tools, laptops, tablets, even phones. I mean, I could not imagine how anything can be written on a phone. Like, it takes me half an hour to write a sentence. I don't know how you do it, but anyway, there are so many tools, even old school typewriters, but they are probably a little bit like you cannot delete stuff easily or edit stuff easily. You need to type again. But the point is I'm trying to make is that it's so accessible. It's so easy to do. And if you have a desire to write, I think what stops a lot of people is this kind of question they're probably asking themselves, am I good enough? And the answer to that question is, there are two answers to that question. One is you don't know until you start writing. And the second answer is, no, you're probably shit. But to get out of that,
You're shit. You fucking shit.
yeah, to get out of that situation where your writing is complete shit is by writing. There's no other way. You have to start.
I've never heard
writing.
I've never heard the curse word expletive shit sound so fucking hysterical. I love it.
Yeah. The only way to get out of that condition of writing shit is by writing more and more shit, and then eventually, if you have that spark in you, and if you have at least a good portion of talent, which if you have that desire to write, probably you do. That's how you get out of this situation and start producing readable stuff. And then it's up to you how to make it more readable. So it's going back to what I've mentioned before. It's training. If it's physical training, like for sport, it's physical training.
And consistency.
But writing is the same thing. There is this thing going around as you need to do 10,000 hours or whatever you're trying to do to achieve sort of world-class status. And in a sense, it's probably correct. I've made the calculation once. I think it's about 5 years, I think, of full-time work that would achieve you this 10,000 hours. And that's pretty much it. It takes probably at least a year, maybe 2 at least, to get to some kind of level. But the only way to do it is to just do it. There's no other, like, you cannot do anything. You cannot be a writer but sitting on your ass and wondering, can I be a writer or not? Just do it. And the entry point is ridiculously low. All you need is a simple tool. And again, back to that point is that the audience is out there, and maybe it will be a small, 5-10 people, but that's an audience. And I cannot describe how much joy is in writing when people get back to you and share their enjoyment of your writing. This is the best thing about it, is that when you hear from readers and they tell you, man, I've loved this stuff that you had written, that's it's not about the money. Like, money is money is a bonus. It's great.
It's icing on the cake.
Yeah, and it's fantastic if you can make money out of it. But what is the more important thing is those readers, that they enjoy your writing and those ideas. If you can actually get your ideas across, if you have any, to other people and share them, and they enjoy this sharing of ideas, that's the whole thing. That's the beautiful thing about writing, is that you can easily share your ideas with others, and if they enjoy it, that's fantastic. So I would encourage you to start writing. If you feel like you want to start writing, just go.
Absolutely. TJ?
I guess my takeaway would be learn how to write, and you can but go experience life, because you'll end up writing stuff. You just don't, if you're young, you don't know who you are. So that would be my advice. I'm not saying to not write at all, but be cognizant of your limitations.
There you go. And last but not least, James.
So, when it comes to creativity, most people are not fundamentally creative, but you will, throughout your life, probably, no matter who you are, you could be the most industrious person in the world, you will probably, in fits and starts at some point, have a creative urge that you just need to, you feel the need to chase, or else it's going to wear on you. It's going to weigh on your mind and start distracting you from things that you want to pay attention to. Go ahead and chase that. Go ahead and do it. If the creativity does not come back and the urge is exercised, don't be afraid to just leave it alone and come back to it at some point. You will not become a writer. You will not become somebody who makes money off of writing. You will become somebody who gets an agent or talks with a publisher or does self-publishing or anything of that sort. That's fine, because you took something that you were grappling with, exercised it from yourself in a manner that was probably fun, and that will make room for whatever the next creative fit and start is. So what I guess I'm saying is, do not mistake a sudden urge to get something creative done as a calling and something to spend the rest of your life on or something of that sort. No, it's fine to do it and then leave it alone and let that part of you stop existing for a little while and only exist in a memoir or in something that you threw up on Amazon. That's okay. If then, after you finish your project, because you won't be able to make this if you don't manage to finish the project, don't just stop there. Stop there. Probably. But if you find the urge coming back at some point, like, okay, no, I need to do this again. It's a repeat exorcism that I have to accomplish in order for this to escape. That's the point at which you should probably start making time in your day to have a schedule and work at it. That's the point at which you should definitely, under any circumstance, go back to the drawing board, go back to your pencil, go back to your tablet, whatever it happens to be, and keep hammering away at it. Because if you have these creative urges, it's not going to be fun to keep them repressed. It's not going to be fun to let them to kill them within yourself. So don't be afraid to, I guess, to wrap things up. Don't be afraid to just get one project done and let it die. Just let it sit there and die, and that was a part of yourself that you can say goodbye to. It was random and it happened to come up in a year. That's fine. If then after that process it keeps coming up, pay attention to it. Do not let it sit there. Don't let it and definitely don't try to compensate for it, because you're just going to be causing yourself more problems. And at that point, it's a piece of your identity that you're going to have to keep grappling with and managing. And why not take it head on?
Agreed, and very well said. Thank you, James, and everyone else. Cool. All right, I'll do a little housekeeping here. Where can everyone find you guys? So, TJ, what's your status? What do you?
Or people can find me at tjmartinell.com.
That's what I was waiting for. Yeah, there you go. So, Barry, how about yourself?
The website barrynishizawa.com, and obviously lurking on Twitter occasionally. Sometimes too much.
always a fun time. Always a fun read. Nikolai, how about yourself?
Twitter is very easy, I guess, to find me on. The handle is xrussian, so it's very easy to remember, xrussian.
Cool.
Otherwise, nikolai.com.au is where you can also find me. That's where my project lives. Nikolai is spelled with K, so nikolai.com.au.
Okay.
And Twitter, yeah, 2 places you can easily find me.
Excellent. James, yourself?
You can find me at ashercreativity.com, and I'd recommend checking me out on Indiegogo and at what did I do now?
No, you just had that you had that announcer voice start.
I'm putting on my presenter vocal cords today,
Yeah.
and you can find me on Kickstarter and Indiegogo.com. Releasing a comic soon, releasing more tabletop supplements, and of course, if you want to keep track of both those things, just hit me up at Asher Creativity.
Say that again.
Just hit me up at Asher Creativity if you want to keep track of the various projects that I have going on, or at AsherCreativity.com.
Like it's funny because when the rare instances that I happen to catch a TV like in the background somewhere, and there's a commercial on or whatever, even streaming, I'm hearing your voice now as the announcer. So,
yeah, I've cursed you, actually.
Fucking dick.
I have now embodied the earworm inside your head.
Exactly. Fuck. God damn it. Well, you are a rising star, my friend. Your voice is going to take you places, and if it doesn't, we're going to kick you in the ass until it does. So
exactly. I'm already terrified of John Steele coming flying over to New Jersey.
Well, he can't. He had that motherfucker has no room to talk because he's got a great voice for pulp detective noir. And as far as I know, he's not utilizing it. So I'll have words with it. John, if you're listening, get on that shit, you fuck. God damn it. So, all right, everyone. It's been amazing having you all here. It's been a great and fun discussion. And as Mictobus has pointed out, a great episode. I'm finding it harder. And actually, you know what? Now, let's let the voice read this. Please, James, if you would. Read that with your announcer voice.
Oh boy, at Masculine Geek, great episode. I'm finding it harder and harder to attend these shows without a notepad at my side.
We're just gonna have you read the chat. That's what we're gonna do.
What do you think my Twitch streams are? Every time people send me lewd things and sexual harassment and things that are not appropriate.
Well, didn't you say you put up you read the beginning to my BDSM essay and you threw it up on one of the Discords, and I was immediately, slandered by this woman who apparently has a failing marriage. That's hysterical. That's great.
Saying nasty things to me, not in my Christian household. How dare you?
Yeah, right. Jesus, that's too funny. We'll do a one of our next shows where we don't have guests or anything like that. We'll just have you read some shit. Have people like throw some shit up in the chat for about 5 minutes and just have you whatever they type, you have to read.
Oh Jesus, that'll be fun.
That'll be a good one. Yeah, let's talk about lewd. Fuck. All right, so everyone, once again, thank you for joining us. It's been a great episode as always. It's good seeing you guys. It's good talking with you as always and as usual. And Barry, welcome the first time once again.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We'll have to do an instance where you come on as just a guest by yourself, if you're up for that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. Excellent. All right, everyone, until the next time, next time will be Wednesday, as usual. Keep the fires burning, keep the lead flying down range, and don't take any wood nickels. So there you have it.